Welcome to CEO Money. I'm Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining with us. I have Michael Marini, author of 401k Confidential, on the show with us today. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Now, in one of the best markets in decades for job seekers, many companies are touting their retirement plans as potential employees, yet many companies are finding flaws in their retirement plans. Why?
Well, it comes down to how in tune the company is to what's in the marketplace and in terms of fees. For job seekers are very astute, very tuned into what the 401k plan is charging in fees. So what we try to do with a company is find a better solution, lower fees, and I'll tell you, nobody in America should be paying even close to 1% of their total money to 401k fees, but we find that a lot of companies are stuck in expensive plans where they're paying north of 2%, some 3%, and some even as much as 5% of the participants' money is going out the door to fees. And the biggest challenge is it's invisible. When you wake up in the morning and you log into your account and you see your number there, you have no idea what the fees are unless you know how to read the fee disclosures, and unless you're tuned into this issue, it's extremely hard to know what's going on. And this is the trap that businesses and CEOs are falling into.
Now, you hang your hat on the ability to be able to reduce that cost. What are we looking at?
So we can get any company in America we can get their total participant fees, meaning all the administrative fees and all the fees of the investment managers, we can get them down to about 0.65% or even less. But we're talking a cap of 0.65% even for a startup company with 5 employees.
Wow, that's a huge savings. That's going to be big on the morale and being able to trust a CEO to make those kind of decisions to help their employees. What can companies do to make sure their retirement offerings are attractive to job applicants?
Well, another thing that we do with companies is we make the 401k plans easier to use. Most 401k plans are basically dinosaurs, even your best plans and at your biggest companies, because they're still using a menu of mutual funds. And they're asking an employee, you got to pick some large cap funds and some small cap funds. You essentially got to become a portfolio manager. And as someone who works with employees, day in and day out, most people are not interested in that. They don't have the time for that, and they're getting it wrong. And so what we're doing in the plans that we're running, we're dumping mutual funds altogether. We're going with exchange-traded funds, and we're hiring portfolio managers to actually build those portfolios. And all the employee has to do essentially is to pick a number 1 through 10. Where are you on the risk scale? And if you can decide that you're a 7 or an 8, great, your work is done. And then we have an active portfolio manager running everything behind the scenes, and they're moving with the markets, and making sure that person is always invested properly for the times.
Now, on that note, there are forces out there in the market right now that would say that maybe sometimes there is you should take some of that 401k and put it into hedge type investments, either inverse ETFs, because you mentioned that those are now more likely to be in the process, or metals, things of that nature. Do you have that kind of freedom?
We can build it into a plan. We can build a plan any way the CEO wants. We can make it as simple or with as many choices as they want. We can go typically we like to go to what we call core ETF models. These are models that are based on percentages of stocks to bonds, whether 70-30, 60-40, 50-50. And then the portfolio managers will determine how much of that stock allocation needs to be in large company stocks, how much in small company stocks, how much international and how much domestic. And then they manage that behind the scenes with the market. So, whereas the average person will pick a menu of mutual funds, albeit not well, they'll typically stick with that all the time. And a manager who's using indexes but moving in and out of sectors based on where the possibilities are, whether they're increasing the international exposure or decreasing it. That's the kind of stuff that we can do behind the scenes now, because quite frankly, we just have better access to better investment products than we had even 3-4 years ago. Better offerings by the industry.
All right, but drilling down into it though, because now we're into a more sophisticated employment base. People are not quite as uneducated as they have been in the past when it comes to this stuff. Right. There are other opportunities out there that can include commodities or other alternative investments. And have we reached the point now with the retirement plans where those kinds of flexible alternative investments are available to the portfolio managers you're working with also?
Yeah, we can, as I said, we can do the core models, which are completely run by the managers, but then we can supplement with a lineup of ETFs, commodities ETF, any type of alternative asset class. You can get an ETF for that.
Okay.
And so you can not only do the models, but you can give 15 or 20 ETF choices for your really sophisticated employees who really, are wonks when it comes to investing. So you can do both.
Got it. I wanted to make sure that we understood the full elbow room we have here. How can companies check to see why applicants don't like their retirement plans? That's a big part.
It's a big part of it. How can they gauge? Well, typically the first thing any employee looks at is how much are you going to match? That's a big question, and because that's the bottom line for a lot of people. Am I going to choose? Is the company going to match what I'm doing? Because if I have a choice between a non-matching and a matching, sometimes that can be a deal breaker for an employee. I find that that's a small number. Well, that's not necessarily a small number of people, but the number of people who are sophisticated 401k investors is a pretty small number, to be honest with you. We're trying to build these plans now to get people to get to the end result. As I said, this antiquated mutual fund menu that they stick in front of people, that system just doesn't work. So whether it's a plan that has a complicated mutual fund menu or that with high fees, there's a lot of ways that we can help companies get a better product in front of people. And if it's a better 401k, people are going to know it. They're going to know it's easier to use, and they're going to know they're paying less in fees. In fact, we disclose the fees without actually making the employees go dig for them.
Got it. Transparency is with all of the disruptive content that we're getting in here about what's happening with the cryptocurrencies, blockchain, things of that nature. Transparency is really coming to the top of the list of what people really want when it comes down to their money, let alone other things. But let's talk about the book. Tell us about that.
So I wrote 401 Confidential, quite frankly, because I became frustrated by talking to business owners. Because by and large, most of them are not tuned in to the 401k fee situation. I could show a company, say, look, you're giving away a third of your money to fees, and a lot of times that message is falling on deaf ears because they don't understand their own 401k plan. And a lot of times they're afraid. They say, well, if I didn't get this right the first time, how am I going to trust someone else? And how do I know that I'm going to get it right the second time? It's so complicated for them to wrap their minds around. So I needed to write the book. I needed to tell people that this does make a difference. Just because your plan is doing a great job, they're processing the contributions on time, the 5500 shows up on time, they have a nice website, the app is great. That's not enough for a company because we're dealing with a finite amount of money here. And so if the best you can do as an investor is, let's say, 10%, and they're chopping off 3% for themselves, I mean, mathematically, you're not going to make it to retirement. It's just not going to work for you. You've got to take as much of that money and be greedy with it as you can and stick it in your own pocket.
Exactly, especially if the stock market isn't screaming through the roof until time ends. All right, I'm so happy to have you on the show. Michael, thank you for being a guest. I want you to come back so that we could talk about, drill down into some of these high-level topics we hit today.
Absolutely. Love to do it.
You've been watching CEO Money with Michael Yorba. Thanks for joining us. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.